welcome everybody to the Big No Podcast. I'm your host, Pamela Cooley, and today we've got another incredible episode for you. It's a big topic. We're talking about mental health. I know, a huge topic, but it's something that I'm super passionate about. And for me, mental health, I feel like sometimes it's masked behind like big smiles and hashtags such as, hashtag living my best life. But for me, to really understand mental health and to support those who are going through it, I think it's really important that we listen to people's lived in experiences. And today I've got an incredible person who I'm so blessed to have on the show today. His name is António Ferreira, and he is a multi-award winning mental health activist and campaigner. And he's someone who is working tirelessly to change the way the UK view mental health, especially when it comes to underrepresented communities. For the Big No podcast is all about turning those no's into next opportunities. And as Antonio likes to say, turning his lemons into lemonade. So welcome, Antonio, to the Big No podcast.
Thank you for having me. By the way, that was a great introduction.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Well, you know what? I'm so honoured to have you here today because you know what? For me, growing up, you know how you have like role models and people that you look up to? Yeah. Okay. Showing my age now, but I loved the Backstreet Boys. Yeah, I absolutely loved the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. And then now I'm an adult and I'm thinking about the things that, I struggled with when I was at school and, when I was a teenager and then when I got into, university and the workforce and things like that. And then you kind of realise that the people that you really look up to are the people who are like you or maybe come from your background, sure. Has gone through the same struggles. They're the people that I find true inspiration from. And I think that you're somebody who many people see as a role model because of what you've gone through and how open you are about it. The struggles that you've gone through that you still may go through as well. And I know the work that you do is so incredibly heavy as well. So I just want to ask you as a first question, how do you manage that consciousness of wanting to go out there and change the way people perceive mental health, but also you are still trying to take care of your own mental health at the same time? How do you juggle that if you do?
Sure. I mean, first of all, thank you for recognizing, my work, the struggles that still continue with the work. And I appreciate you calling it inspiration as well. I guess for me, it's, when I was young, someone said to me, once you turn your hobby into work, it starts to become more of a burden than something you enjoy doing. So for me, I try to maintain that passion, but that genuine interest I have for it, and not just that, it's my job now. I need to inspire people. I need to, I need to do this much for people because people are expecting this from me. It definitely is something I want to do out of my own accordance, and because I'm doing it out of my accordance, I go at my own pace, yes. Right? It's inevitable that even still with that, there will come pressures and expectations. But as I said, I found my purpose in this journey, right? And that purpose will not be taken away by anyone else or misconstrued by anyone else. And so grounding yourself in the idea that I know why I joined this journey. I know why I'm on this journey. I know what I want out of this journey. Of course, it's to benefit others, right? That is the main goal, outcome out of all of it. But I chose this journey for myself to inspire others. And so I will inspire people when and how I want to inspire people at my own pace and my own well-being.
Yeah, love that. So if we go back to the beginning, you've gone through some trauma in your life. And if you don't mind me saying that, so you were diagnosed with undifferentiated schizophrenia.
Yes.
Could you just give us an idea of what that is?
Yeah, sure. So it was quite a new term for me as well. When people think of schizophrenia, it's, schizophrenia is actually a general term. And so what it will be is that there's about 3 or 4 other categories that make up schizophrenia. So you'll have paranoid schizophrenia, which I'm sure a lot of people will be aware of. You'll have catastrophic schizophrenia. And then I think there's another 1 or 2, which I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But undifferentiated means that all 4 or 3 come into one. And so there isn't the category it goes into specifically. I have elements of each one, the catastrophic part of schizophrenia, the paranoid part of schizophrenia, and whatever the others are. So it's undifferentiated ultimately.
Okay. So when were you diagnosed with that? And what was the build up to that?
When I was diagnosed is a difficult one because, see, I went through it as a teenager, right? And what I guess a lot of people find is when you're in services as a child or adolescence, you're not really told everything that's going on. It's more your parents that are told, because I guess it's a thing of not wanting to overwhelm you. So I really just found out when I decided to take lead in my own care and I start asking questions. That's when I found out, you know, I had this diagnosis. Before knowing about schizophrenia, there were actually multiple variations that were added to my my health records before that. So, you know, there was an ongoing process in that sense. Now, the lead up to it, you know, I was this student, a model student, if you'd say. When I'd get homework, you know, I wouldn't take more than 24 hours to do that homework. I'd go home the same day and do that homework. If I didn't have homework, I'd write out a whole book just to improve my handwriting, you know. So I was that student that appeared determined, hardworking, and, you know, really, really focused, right? And that in itself is good. You know, hands down, I'm proud to have had those attributes. However, there comes a thin line when that then turns into unhealthy expectation, unhealthy pressure. Yeah. Because I grew up my whole life being a student or being known as a student, it was like, wow, now I can't not be this student, right? Yeah. So I had to live up to what, I guess, those expectations that were set upon me. And, you know, at the time I was going through high school, getting closer to GCSEs, it was really stressful. I was experiencing physical symptoms of the stress I was going through. And I think it just came to the day where I'd been building up so much emotion, so much stress, so much tension, that it all came out, you know, and it started to come out, I guess. Now, the first thing that happened was I got into an altercation with a senior staff of my high school at the time. I'd never gotten a disciplinary before, so this was the first time in all my school years. And it was for gross defiance. I can't exactly remember what was going on, but I remember, you know, I was putting up a fight towards something I was instructed to do, and I was like, no, you know, whatever, so forth. And so that raised concerns to the people closest to me, my parents, my teachers. And I think I recall my head of year is who suggested to my parents, you know, something maybe it might be up with Antonio, maybe he should, you know, be seen by someone to see if there's something that can be done. And my parents, you know, took me to my general practitioner. From my general practitioner, I was referred to Child Adolescent Mental Health Service. Now, whenever I tell this part, everyone thinks it's funny, but it's really serious. It's not, you know, a pun on words like of Drake's song, but at CAMS, things went 0 to 100 real quick. It was, you know, trying to figure out what was going on, but as someone who had never had the conversation on mental ill health, was so ignorant to it, was so oblivious to it, how could I explain what was going on, right? Yeah. I just denied it all. Personally, I denied it all, and to everyone else I denied. I said, no, I'm just, boys will be boys, kids will be kids, you know, this is what it is. Until it came to that point where I guess my mind had enough. You know, I was experiencing auditory hallucinations, I was paranoid, I was, you know, as I said, having catastrophic thinking, this idea of black or white thinking where, you know, if I didn't become what everyone else wanted me to become, that'd be it for me. And that pressure grew and grew and grew through the years. Fortunately, I passed my GCSEs, but then came sixth form college, and that was a whole different pressure, as you can imagine. And so at that point, my mind just believed the best option to get rid of all the troubles I was going through was to attempt to take my own life. You know, it was the idea of, well, if I can't escape my mind, then I have to escape the whole world sort of ideation. And, you know, in that attempt, fortunately, my brother was there to sort of stop me from doing what I wanted to do. And then I went into a psychiatric unit at the age of 16. And I guess from there is really when I found my purpose. I accepted my mental ill health and I just strived for ambition.
That's an incredible story.
Thank you.
I mean, we keep using the word like inspiration, and I feel like we're starting to dilute that. But honestly, I wouldn't use it if I didn't wholeheartedly believe in it, because I can't even imagine what that would have been like at a teenager at that time. Like the amount of fear that you must have had. And I think also it just kind of shows you just how powerful your mind can be. And this is why we need to really put focus on our mental health, because we tend to neglect the fact that our brain is like a muscle. Do you know what I mean? And we have to take care of it, and we need to reach out and be asking for help. But the asking for help is such a huge step, right?
Yes, it is.
And also, let's just talk about the fact that we are talking about mental health as a black teenage boy. The challenges, the stigma, the additional stigmas that come with that. And I'm not saying there's no stigmas for, you know, any other child from a different background, but we just need to make it crystal clear that there's additional challenges for those from underrepresented communities such as ours. How did you feel as well when you were told that diagnosis? Did you have the same kind of misconceptions that maybe other people would have? Or did you find it hard to accept it? Or were you just like, okay, that's what it is?
Yeah, I was more the latter. I was like, okay, that's what it is. I guess if I'd found out earlier, maybe I would have held that misconception that came with it, because as I tell it, you know, the only thing I knew about, or I perceived about mental ill health, was watching the Joker and Batman.
Yeah.
That's really the idea I had of mental ill health. You know, as funny as it sounds, it really is the idea I had of mental ill health, until, as I said, I went into the psychiatric unit. I learned from other patients, from my peers. That's when I realized, oh, hang on. This is more than just a Joker and Batman. This is, you know, this is reality.
Yeah.
And there's so many versions of it that is under misconceptions, right? So I think, at the time I found out, I was just like, okay, it is what it is. And it actually gave me a bit of relief, because it's like, I know what's going on. You know, I know what I'm working towards now. Almost like, you know, imagine you're trying to, you know, do an assignment or something, and you're trying to find all the answers. And you're like, oh my God, I can't find the answers. What's going on? You build that frustration. But once you find the answer, you're like, okay, I know where to go now with this. I know what I'm following. I know what I'm doing, sort of thing. So yeah, it was more just, okay, you know.
Did that offer you some kind of relief as well?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely. But, you know, again, that was just probably the start of other frustrations. You know, yes, and at that time I was relieved that I got that diagnosis, but
and what do you do with that diagnosis?
Yeah, exactly, right. And what you'll find is, in different services that you go towards, that diagnosis now gets a different idea, and people are like, no, that's wrong, and actually, no, I think it's this, and I think it's a lot more, and, you know, then that frustration comes in a whole different aspect.
It's quite interesting when you said about, like, you know, the idea you had of schizophrenia was like the Joker, because something very similar to my family, who are neurodiverse, and my eldest is autistic, and a lot of people, it's very similarly, would be like, oh, autism, they think of like Rain Man or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Or they think of the other end of the spectrum, where it's like some incredible genius.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And even when we got our son's diagnosis, and our children are mixed race, we almost felt like something magical was going to happen when we got this diagnosis. And in all reality, that's when the hard work actually started, because you get the diagnosis, you get a leaflet, with very general leaflet, and then it's kind of like, off you go. Figure it out. And I think you have to it depends on, it's a bit of a postcode lottery depending on where you are in the country. Depends on what services that you get. And that's one of the major frustrations with me, because I'm like, why should it be so different depending on where you live and your background or your gender or your ethnicity? I think there's so many biases when it comes to, you know, diagnoses of every range. And I know that you are working so hard to kind of change the perception of how the UK views mental health, and, you know, the services available to those. So would you say that this whole experience has this been like the biggest turning point in your life?
Most definitely. Yeah, most definitely. Before this, all I wanted to do was play football for Manchester United.
Why do I feel like you were going to say that?
Yeah, you know, that was my ambition. That was my aspiration. So it, definitely was a major turning point. And, you know, it was fortunately a positive turning point. You know, there's a lot of situations where going through those experiences, they actually break someone further, and, you know, they never actually come to be anything, you know, I guess not anything better, but they don't want to work towards anything more. You know, it just becomes their whole reality.
But you can understand why.
Of course. And, you know, as I said, you know, learning from my peers and in the psychiatric unit, it was actually more them that sprung me towards, actually, I need to do something here to change, you know, to change the views of people, because it was almost like, you know, they were struggling, they were going through their own experiences, but they were satisfied with that. And they said, and it's like they looked at me and said, I see something in you though, and I want you to go out there and do it for us, you know. Like they sat with me outside my room and stuff like that, talked to me through things, you know, they made me understand things better. If you're like at the beginning when I first spoke to them, because I was so ignorant, I'd always say to them, by the way, I'm not here for the same things as you.
Really?
You know? Yeah, I was that ignorant, right? And you know.
But do you think that's almost a part of like protection as well? Because you don't want to succumb to the idea that, I am like you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, that comes in with that lack of knowledge, lack of education, right? And very fortunate that they didn't take that so personal, but actually looked beyond that and said, okay, you know what, we could help him, sort of thing, rather than, you know, take his judgment to heart.
That's really powerful and such an amazing opportunity for people to share their experiences and stories. And I think as an author as well, I think there's so much power in storytelling, and, you know, sharing the hardest parts of your story, because it could literally be that blueprint to help somebody be like, okay, I'm going to try this. Like, that person's done it, and I want to, you know, we all deserve to be happy. And I feel like when you can relate to somebody who's going through the same issues or circumstances as you, it gives you that hope. And I think when it comes to mental health, a lot of the time people don't have that hope.
Yeah.
That hope is completely diminished. So I actually don't know where I'm going with this, but
I think you're right. I think you're right. That is what I was trying to say. You know, is that people are so in most cases people can't find that hope again, and so they just live under that rock of, you know, it is what it is, sort of thing. But in that situation in the psychiatric unit, they were like, okay, you know what? If we can give you hope, that's good enough for us. I think a lot of what you'll find is a lot of people, what I believe is that with a lot of people, they will want to help others more than themselves. And if they can help others, they're happy with that.
Yeah.
As great as that sounds, we should still encourage others to help themselves as well and find that hope. And that's why I think I took that oath, that vow when I came out of the psychiatric unit, that, you know, first I'd go and study it, and that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Two, I'd advocate for it. You know, I'd be that beacon of hope for people who were satisfied with being hopeless. That's actually, you know, let's get up, let's, you know, work towards that. And you know what, I will start that drive for you. All you have to do is get in the car and we'll go together.
Yeah. So what do you think about the whole concept of how schools can become more involved in supporting their students? Because I was thinking back to when I was at school, especially around like sex education. And again, I'm showing my age here, but but when we had sex education, I think the first time they separated the boys and the girls. So the girls went into one room and the boys went into the other room. And I remember at that time thinking, but to have sex, you need to be together. So why are we not in the same room listening about sex? And I found it really weird that they almost separated us, as if it was like this really weird, dirty thing that, you know, we don't really want to talk about, but we have to. And I think also, like, we really very, very rarely touched on mental health.
Right.
And if it was about mental health, I think it was, they didn't even use the word depression or anxiety back then. It was almost a sense of like, you know, just get on with it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it was like, there was no kind of support or offering there, or anybody came into school to say, you know what, I've got mental health problems. So there was no kind of like sharing experiences or listening. So the work that you do, what are the kind of key fundamental things that you want to install in, you know, students when you go there? And what are the things that schools can do to really, like, realistically support their students?
I think from personal experience, teachers, you know, indirectly, I'm sure they meant it with pure good intentions, were part of that pressure for me to achieve. You know, when teachers would sort of point you out in the class as a good student, as a high achieving student. Oh, look at Antonio, look, he done this and he done that. Why can't the rest of you follow in his example?
Right.
Oh, Antonio, you're such a hardworking student. Don't get distracted by your other peers. You know, these kind of words that should be encouragement, and at times they are. We also need to understand how they're taken by the student, how they're understood by the student. I think as teachers, sometimes we get lost in that bubble of just teaching, and, you know, achieve. Whereas we don't take a step back and go, actually, I wonder how he's doing. You know, I wonder how he's coping with all of this. I wonder how he's managing. And that was the unfortunate thing for me that I lacked during my time through school. You know, no one stopped to go, actually, I wonder how he's, you know, taking on all this. How is he managing all of this work? You know, he's coming through with it, but how is he actually managing it? So that would be the first thing I say, is actually, you know, understanding your students and how they cope and manage with the work, the language, you know, all of that. And then as students, I think if and when I complete university, I would have done 7 years at university. And someone would say I'm a persistent student, which, you know, is a good attitude to have, of course. But it's just really doing things in your own pace, you know, not sort of living under that internal timer of, oh my God, if I don't, you know, get my GCSEs done in this time, then everything will fail. You know, we all work at our own pace, our own level, as I started at the beginning, right? And we can't be expected to do as others are doing. You know, we have to find our own path, our own lane, and just flow with that, you know. I think what we tend to do is look at, especially when we're putting sets, you know, someone who's in a high set, someone's in a low set, will always compare ourselves to each other, right? And the person in the low set will most likely look at the person in the high set and be like, man, why can't I be like them? Why can't I be in their set? Why can't I do as much as them? And the person in the high set might even look at those in the lower set and be like, you guys got it so easy, you know, there's so much we're doing. I wish I could just, you know, sit back or whatever it is, you know, in that set. So it's really just finding that middle ground, that balance of actually, okay, I know what I need to do here, but I also know what my capabilities and my capacity is within this ambition.
That's really interesting. So what do you do at the moment to really kind of take care of your mental health? Are there kind of like key things which are like non-negotiables where you try and do daily or weekly and you find that really, really helps? Or is it more of like over time you've accumulated this kind of like toolkit where you just kind of like dip into that and then try that? Or
Well, first and foremost, I have breakfast. I tell you how important that is. I never used to have breakfast. I used to probably have one meal a day and just drink loads of fizzy drinks. And my psychiatrist pulled me up once and said, that's why you're so impulsive, because your diet is full of caffeine and not enough, you know, a varied nutrients and minerals, right? You're just focused on this sugar and
So what was
caffeine.
was that just because you just wanted to have something quick, or you just weren't hungry, or you just...
I was just, you know, concerned with other things. You know, I didn't really pay attention.
That wasn't a priority.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't a priority. And I didn't know the connection between your gut and your mind at the time, you know, because of just how far they are from each other. I just thought there's nothing connected here. But then, as I said, you know, we learn with our mistakes. And when my psychiatrist pulled me up on it, I said, let me try it differently and see what happens, right? So I, you know, try my best to avoid fizzy drinks, energy drinks. I don't drink coffee. I will have breakfast every day. And then aside from diet, you know, I try to talk a lot more. I try not to bottle things up, and sometimes it's good to have different people for different conversations, right? My parents, my brothers, friends, different things for different conversations. And the key thing in it all is balance. As much as I work, as much as I study, taking that time out to really love yourself, to fill yourself with your own company, that is important, because, you know, you try to chase company in everyone else. You once everyone else is, you know, not there, you'll feel so lonely. But that lonely is a I guess a perceived hallucination, because you're so used to being around company that you've not been used to your own company. That when, you know, one day everyone's not available because they're busy with their own lives, you start to think, I'm so lonely, I don't have no friends, you know. So it's finding the balance between all these ends, you know, and just understanding things a bit more, you know. A common example is, you know, you walk into a room where people are having a conversation, and as soon as you walk in, they stop talking. You know, our first thoughts are they were talking about me, but actually maybe they were talking about something that is a trigger to you, and so they were actually protecting you, you know. So it's about looking at things in a different perspective, and just when you have conversation with people, you start to learn that there are different perspectives to things, not just your own.
Yeah, absolutely. So breakfast is one.
Yes.
Okay. Things like exercise, does that help? Or
it does. I'm saying that for the camera, it does. But I don't really exercise much. I'm trying to get back into it. It is a goal for me this year. I definitely know the benefits of it, and that's why I want to get into it. I just haven't reached that point.
I say that because I come from a health and fitness background anyway, and fitness was the thing that, I'm not even going to exaggerate, saved my life when I had agoraphobia. So I was diagnosed with agoraphobia, and for those who don't know, it's like extreme fear of large spaces or leaving your home. And for me, it was very much the latter. I couldn't leave my home. But exercise was something that finally got me out of the home. So I started doing like YouTube videos in my bedroom because I felt really safe then. And then over a period of a few months, I started to just build up that confidence. And it gave me that kind of escapism where for that short amount of time, I was just focusing on something and getting out of my own head for a bit. And that was for me just like revolutionary. So I know the benefits of how exercise can really help. But I also can 100% understand that when you're in a dark place and someone goes, just do a bit of exercise, you're like, fuck off. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't get out of bed, or I'm constantly battling with these thoughts in my head, and you want me to go and do some jumping jacks. Like, to that person in that moment of time, it's not practical. So Is there anything that you think, like, if there's one takeaway that you would advise someone to do when they're in that midst of despair and they feel like there is no hope out there and they can't reach out to someone? Is there anything that you have learned through your own struggles that kind of is your beacon of light in that moment? Hard question, right?
Yeah. It's a tough question. There's a few things, but they're all just, I guess, reminders to myself, right? And the first one is, it's the tortoise that won the race, not the hare. You know, so you've really got to take each time with each step, because you will get there in the end. I've got that tattooed on me. That's how much I believe in it. And then the second one is, you know, it doesn't rain forever. And although I know the sun doesn't shine forever too, it's a normal habit to, when it rains, to wear a jacket as protection, right?
Yeah.
So when it is raining, you know, we wear a jacket, and that jacket will be our resilience. And so we just need to find our resilience through those rainy days, because the sun will come out eventually.
Absolutely.
You know, and you will have to push against the clouds to see the sun shining again. But, you know, the opposite ends, because without the bad, you won't appreciate the good. And so sometimes we have to have those moments of despair to then realize when the good comes into it, we can hold on to it with dear life, and we can say, I'm glad I waited.
Yeah. So are you hyper aware now of when you feel like you are taking too much on and when you are exhausted? And I say that because I saw I think it was your LinkedIn post or maybe Instagram post just before Christmas.
Sure.
And I think you had said that, by the way, you've done incredible things and won incredible awards, and rightly so. And I think you started off with that you had been either nominated or you'd received some kind of award. I'm so sorry, I can't remember what it was.
No worries.
But in the same post, you said that you'd also realised that you'd taken on too much.
Yeah.
And you put something out, which I could get a little bit emotional. I'm so sorry, I don't know why. But you said something about, like, you felt like you're sorry that you'd let people down.
Yes.
And it was that word, letting people down. And I just thought, oh my God, like, could you just take a step back to see the impact that you've had on people's lives? And
Sure.
and you are human, do you know what I mean? And I feel like sometimes when we're in this space where we want to make so much impact and so much change for everybody else, then we actually forget that we also need to make that impact for ourselves. Yeah. So when you put that post out saying that, you lost relationships or,
Yeah.
you know...
I know exactly which post you're talking about. Yeah,
I was like, oh my God, I'm grateful that you put that post out because it shows your vulnerable side of you.
Yeah.
And we all have these feelings of, like, when we let people down and we feel shit and all the rest of it. But not many of us will post that. Do you know what I mean? But I just thought that whole concept of letting people down, I was like, I want you to know that you didn't let anyone down. Because I think you would have let yourself down if you just kept pushing and pushing and pushing to the point of break point.
Yeah.
And I feel like you've worked so hard that you should never ever think that you've let anybody down.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, you know, you're right. I did get to breaking point last year. So I relapsed. I went back into hospital for my mental health. And this is where I said, you know, about actually remembering why I took this journey on and my purpose within this journey and, you know, my pace within this journey. Because it got to a point where, you know, yes, I was winning all these awards and, you know, people were saying great things. But then that gave room for another expectation to live up to, right? Yeah, exactly. Another pressure. And it was like, oh my God, everyone sees me as this really highly motivated, inspirational, hopeful person. I don't want to give them any clue that I'm not, you know, that today or tomorrow or this week. Yeah. I just want to keep going and show them, okay, I am this person. I am hope and inspiration and motivation, you know. There is no space. I gave myself no space to be weak, vulnerable.
Because you can be both.
Right. And you can, and you're right.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was like, as I said, you know, letting people down because I was trying to push myself. There came times where, you know, I physically and mentally couldn't push myself. And so I had to let down, I had to deny opportunities and, you know, I had to tell people, I can't do this anymore today or so on forth and so forth. And that to me felt like a huge weight. It was like, man, you know, they really put their trust in me. They really put their expectation in me. And I just went, I can't do it. Yeah. You know, so for me, again, it comes back to that black or white thinking. You know, if I've said no here, then that's it, really, you know. But I think last year, along with all of that, the awards, the relapse was a year full of lessons, mistakes. And, you know, I don't, in a sense, regret any of it because this year, you know, as we was talking out there, it's made me a lot more focused and understanding in terms of hang on a minute, you know, there is still my mental well-being here, even as an activist and campaigner. There are still boundaries. Yeah, you're right. And yeah, you know, I just learned to take things a lot less intense.
Yeah.
And just, you know, if I can't do it, well, when one door closes, another door opens.
Absolutely.
Right. And yeah, I set some rules as well. Like, I try not to have more than 2-3 stretching meetings in a day, and to have, you know, including the weekend, a day of the week off where I do nothing at all. And, you know, that's okay, because, you know, we work at our own pace, our own level. And the goal isn't to be the quickest to change the world. It's, you know, the small things make the biggest difference. And
Absolutely.
so we still take each step slowly and as it comes, and we will get there eventually. As I said, it's the tortoise that won the race, not the hare.
Love that. Okay, I've got some closing questions for
Sure.
you, some big ones, okay?
Sure.
So, number one, if I could give you a magic eraser right now and you could go back in time and erase any part of your history or any events, would you or would you not?
No, I wouldn't erase any events, anything from my history. I think, and the reason I say that is because it made me who I am today, simply put. You know, I think a lot of people, when they go through some certain experiences, they regret those experiences, but actually the wise didn't become wise without making mistakes.
Absolutely.
So, you know, we have to embrace those mistakes and say, okay, actually, in that mistake, in that defeat, there was a lesson in how I win next time and how I do better. So rather than erase it, let's analyze it and work out even better if.
And I love the question, you've probably been asked this or heard it, like, what advice would you give to your younger self? But I want to ask you, what would your younger self say to you right now?
That was a tough question.
It could be anything.
I think it'd look at me and say, man, you really proved me wrong. That's what I say, you really proved me wrong. Because at that time where I thought, you know, I couldn't escape what I was going through, well, we did that, you know, with sheer strength and willpower. And I didn't see that at the time. So I think, definitely would have looked, my younger self would look at me now and say, man, you really proved me wrong, and I'm glad you did.
Yeah, your own role model.
yeah.
And this one's probably going to be a tough one. But with this podcast, obviously, it's about, you know, looking for those next opportunities. And it's hard, you know, when you get rejection or setbacks in life, it stings. And I want to have more of these conversations with people. So is there anybody in your line of work, your network, your community who you think, actually, I want Pam to listen to their story? And if there is, don't say the name. But could you just give us an idea of who this person is and why you think they'll be a great person to come on the podcast? Putting you on the spot now.
Yeah, and you know what? It's the fact I can't name them, so that's why I'm trying to think how I say
Don't
this.
say the name.
So there is someone, but they came into my life as a pair, right? So they came as a pair. I think they have just shown.
Did you say pair?
A pair, yeah.
I thought it was a pet first.
No, a pair.
Like, we're getting an animal on here.
No. So I met both at the same time. They came
into
life at the same time, and they have just shown the utmost patience, understanding, dedication, and passion towards what I believe in and what they believe in. And you know, they've just been that role model for me in terms of they've had their adversity, they've had their experiences, but are now turning that into something, if I say what, it makes it obvious, into something that supports others.
Okay.
Right? And I just, you know, it's a space I'm very passionate about. I you know, admire a lot. And I will, it's unfortunately not today, but I will go anywhere and everywhere showing off that space, right? Yeah, I think they've just done a lot for me as personally and professionally, and it's hard to come across, you know, gems as such. And so I'm trying to find it difficult to say it without giving away anything. But
you tell me afterwards and we'll try and make it happen though.
Yeah, please. No, it'd be great.
We're going to see if we can make it happen. You know what? I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I feel like we can explore this so much more, and I'd love to get you back on again so we can talk more about it. But thank you so much for sharing your story. Honestly, it's going to be that beacon of light to other people who are going through their own trials and tribulations right now. And I feel like you're such an incredible person who wants to give back to people as well. But I think it's really important that you remember to give back to yourself, because you're an incredible person. So thank you so much for coming on the Big No podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was a great conversation.
Yay!